Dan, before
Good evening and welcome, everyone. This is Dan Winter, again, fractalu.com, fractalfield.com. And we have a wonderful program for tonight. It'll be the announcement of my new book, plankfire.com, Plankphire, plankfire.com announcement, which functions as a good conceptual backdrop for the bulk of tonight's conversation, which is about the science behind implosion in water, the imploder.com. So we're going to be talking about what's charge collapse, which is the subject of Plankfire, which is a backdrop for how implosion works in water. Tufan, were you going to say something? Did you have an announcement or something?
Sure, we can remind next week's lecture with Patrick Bott. We will be talking about iThrive and deep sleep night analysis. And the following week, again, with Patrick Bott, realheartcoherence.com, Real Heart Coherence EKG, empathy trainer, how it works based on Dan's equations.
Oh, great. Thank you, Tufan. So yes, that overnight sleep analysis capability of iThrive.com is amazing. You find out whether you're getting the right access to the deep sleep required for lucid dreaming, for example. So if you're not getting access to deep sleep, it's a serious indicator of you probably won't succeed at lucid dreaming, et cetera. Remember in this famous Star Trek episode, the ship's doctor noticed that everyone was grouchy and they found out no one was getting deep sleep. And it had to do with actually a sector of the galaxy they were in, which actually is suggestive because if the longitudinal array is available to you, like a magnetic cross point, a grid node, it radically affects your ability to dream and sleep because you're propagating into that array. So it's very interesting to measure whether you're getting access to the deep sleep component every night, which is indicated by rapid eye movement, but it's indicated also by the pulse analysis of heart rate variability, iThrive.com, ITHRVE.com. So next week will be sleep analysis. Remember, they had a whole BBC 2-hour episode on the value of doing sleep analysis with heart rate variability. And normally you go to a hospital and they do sleep analysis for overnight, you spend big bucks. And now you can do it yourself. It's inexpensive and it's powerful. So that's a very useful thing next week with Patrick. Super. I want to welcome many friends we see here tonight. Aircrete Harry, speaking of implosion devices, Aircrete is doing an implosion with the imploder and with concrete and with buildings and bubble buildings. Welcome, Aircrete Harry. And Alex Galvez is here. Hi, Alex. Welcome. Alex is co-sponsored many of our earlier lectures with the SSP Secret Space Program experiencers, including with Johann Fritz, et cetera. And actually, we're planning another event in that series, perhaps on Saturday. So Alex is very connected to the Secret Space Program people and does lots of other work too. Welcome, Alex. Thank you. And Shelley is here, Shelley Evans of theshareablewave.com, our favorite. We're going to be talking. And Dan Mack is here. And Dan Mack was just talking about, or you were talking about Tony Rodriguez analogy. You want to say that again? I thought it was good, Dan.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Dan McDonald. Yeah, well, I was watching the podcast yesterday, and Dan was explaining the compression, the negentropic compression through Planck, the dimensions. And then Tony said, "Now, hold on, wait a minute." He said, would the Planck, the dimension, would that be like a pixel? And he says, it's like a pixel, right? And Dan said, yeah, it's like the three-dimensional pixel in the whole universe, because everybody's familiar with TV pixels, right? So that's two dimensions. Well, the Planck dimension is the pixel for the whole universe, and however many dimensions we get to. Right now, we're stuck on 3 or 4, and hopefully a bunch of us evolve up to the number 5 or number 6, but it's multidimensional. And it was very apropos because I've been trying to explain this to some of my friends. And in fact, I think that your little Planck piezo things, I have an awful lot of people that, sit at a desk and don't get around and don't do much. And they got sciatic problems with their lower back and they won't do acupuncture. I mean, I've had that, and acupuncture works good, but I'm really hoping that your piezo, come out soon.
Yeah, sharp localized pain. We had a hernia case a couple of days ago. Amazing. So you've got a piezo device and then a Shungite super dielectric lens to focus the capacitive field. And so that then very implosive, the 2 pine cones, this is fed by the infrasound, Flame in Mind, Flame in Sound app. And you get a tingling compression feeling. And it's amazing, like 5 minutes in almost every case, we've had no failures to eliminate pain so far. It's amazing because it's doing like what Therify is doing, but very localized, very focused. And it's a tingling effect. And it's going to be much less expensive, of course. So we're excited about that. And that will be at PiezoFire, PHIRE.com. And there's a teaser there now. You're going to see there's actually the first version of the manuals there. So yes, coming soon to a theater near you.
Will Quantify do the same thing? I mean, is it not as powerful? Because right now I can't afford to spend the big for the Therify.
Yeah,
So
the Quantify is much lower power level, but the blood tests and the response are so positive. You can read, those are serious responses and experiences reported, therify.net/quantify. And for example, live blood cell results and pain results, many things. Quantify has the advantage. You can apply the same external audio modulation, where you can pick a specific chakra, a specific part of the body from the Flame in Sound app and feed the Quantify. Unfortunately, the Therify at 500,000 volts, external modulation has issues of crosstalk, et cetera. So it's too messy. We can't externally modulate. So the Therify is much more powerful, but not externally programmable. So Quantify with that advantage, so a lot of people are having really positive stories as well. And that will then also be true of these things. So cool. So tonight's conversation originally was scheduled to be the science behind implosion in water. And but then since Tufan Guven, a local hero, was with Anna, they showed up here for almost 3 weeks, and we did some seriously hard work on my new book, plankfire.com, PLANCKPHIRE.com. So we decided that we're going to do a little intro tonight, introducing the new book and just a short teaser about how that works and what it's about. So, and that you see, because the core part of Planck Fire is actually about charge collapse, and charge collapse is actually how implosion in water works. So it's a perfect introduction that there's a way out for charge through center at Planck called Planck Fire, which looks like this. So when the phi ray cascades through Planck at center, it creates perfect charge collapse. And that's the subject. So perfected fractal charge collapse, cause of gravity, consciousness, life force, and negentropy. For years, I've been talking about fractal field and implosion and centripetal force and phase conjugation. But it turns out that even the most powerful way of talking about that in conventional physics is to realize that what the descriptors answer is the most important question in all of physics, which is the cause of charge collapse. Implosion is a solution to charge collapse. Phase conjugation is a solution to charge collapse. So the reason that charge collapse is such a key term in physics is because the physics community has widely recognized, and here we're discussing this, scientists clearly agree perfected charge collapse is the cause and mechanism of gravity and consciousness. For instance, these people like Gary Schwartz and Stuart Hameroff, they all agree that consciousness causes charge collapse or charge collapse causes consciousness. And interestingly, the physicists who are discussing gravity and the solution to the unified field, virtually all of them agree that charge collapse is the solution to the cause of gravity in the unified field. What none of them seem to have answered, the question is, what is the cause of charge collapse? And that is the question answered in detail with examples, equations, and successful commercial proof that Planck Fire is the cause of charge collapse. And you can see why we call it Planck Fire. You literally take Planck, as Dan Mack just said beautifully, Planck is the pixel of the universe. It's the smallest unit of light. It's the unit of length and time into which every wave physics has ever measured divides evenly. So it is the resolution of the quantum foam, or as Dan and Tony so nicely put it, it's the pixel. So if you tune the charge collapse to that pixel, you're going to get a cone, and that cone is going to be called theimploder.com. If you scale your charge collapse accurately, then at the compression point at the center of the vortex cone, if it's tuned and scaled correctly, charge can collapse through Planck and be accelerated into the longitudinal, which is how you make gravity. And it is the way out for charge at the center of the vortex, at the center of the implosion, which was the mystery that stumped Einstein. He knew that the charge had to have a way out, non-destructive compression, he called it, but he didn't know that the way out was Planck, because at that threshold, specifically, the transverse electromagnetic is converted at the tip of the squirt gun into longitudinal interferometry, which is what gravity waves are made of. So there's exact multiples of golden ratio times Planck is called Planck fire, and that is the solution to charge collapse. And we said many smoking guns, three hydrogen radii, exactly the only two colors making photosynthesis, exactly the width and height of one DNA ladder rung. Thank you to Tufan for helping me discover that. The Schumann harmonics, Earth year, Venus year, solar year, galactic year, precessional year, all of these units of length and time are exact golden ratio multiples times Planck. This is the smoking gun. The reason is because this is the cause of charge collapse and therefore the cause of gravity. Remember, golden ratio is the dominant geometry of all orbital mechanics. Check spirosolaris.ca. So this is a smoking gun. And then, so once we address charge collapse for gravity, we also then discuss charge collapse in golden ratio in brain waves, identifying charge collapse in peak bliss experience, and showing that that's what forms the vortex inside your head that the kids see through when they're blindfolded. And that vortex becomes an eyeball, and that plasma vortex imploding because of charge collapse is the mechanism of consciousness, for the first time explaining how you can take your consciousness outside your body, because you take a coherent plasma vortex imploding because of charge collapse. And actually that vortex looks like, oops, no, I seem to have lost my, sorry about that. One moment, I wanted to show this picture here. See this? This is what we say. When fields turn inside out recursively in golden ratio fractality with Planck as the centripetal black hole, the pixel, connection to longitudinal scalar EMF gravity waves results. As we proved, this is true in hydrogen and brainwaves during bliss, that negentropic charge collapse implosion is the cause of gravity, consciousness, and life itself. It's rather primal that physics doesn't know why anything is centripetal. Therefore, they don't know why electronegativity is centripetal, why gravity is centripetal, or why life force is centripetal, or why focused human attention is measurably electrically centripetal. This is the answer. Charge collapse enabled by Planck fire. So the titles of sections here, and thank you for Tufan for helping me structure this book. So the first section is how charge collapse defines all sacred dimensions. For example, the British foot is an exact golden ratio power times Planck. The reason is because sacred dimensions are sacred because they enable charge collapse. Definition of the sacred. Hello. Consciousness as charge collapse, negentropy, and self-organization articulated by the qualities of universal ether. Remember, the universal ether is a superfluid. Next section is called origin of spin. Then we describe how action at a distance works, coherent longitudinal interferometry. Next, we go into detail on the cause of gravity, why objects fall to the ground, because the waves add and multiply recursively using only golden ratio, producing acceleration towards center from only that fractal geometry of compression. And when that fractal compression produces acceleration due to golden ratio, that acceleration towards center is named the gravity. Then how and why the geometry of space is fractal. There's many references now that people have agreed that space itself is fractal and based on the golden ratio. Why? Because that's how you stabilize gravity. Consciousness of charge collapse, implosive charge collapse, and life force in biologic architecture. Section on rainmaking and labyrinths as charge collapse. section on the origin of perception as phase conjugation. There are other researchers agreeing, and then we talk about the physics of heaven and the physics of bliss and the physics of Kundalini process as charge collapse. Then we talk about something about impulse and warp propulsion. There's a Star Trek section. The physics of pyramids as a global wireless power supply, literally a gravity diode, how that works. Then we talk about the science of disappearing and portals and stargates, about the flower of life, the golden ratio nature of touch, the love hug, why that's charge collapse, stargates and portals. And then we talk about the atomic table. So those are some of the sections in the new book. And you can see that at the website, planckfire.com. Let's see, turn off this share now. So the PDF and the Kindle are there at the website already. And the paperback should be out within a few days if Amazon does what they promised. So it's looking good.
And there's a lot of content that was not available in the previous book, which was written 10 years ago. Dan's latest book, Fractal Conjugate Space and Time, even though the name might sound familiar, but there's a lot of new content that Dan put together.
Thank you, Tufan. Yes. And the real point at which I decided that we needed to assemble another book was when I realized that the words we were using, implosion and phase conjugation, are not common to physicists. Whereas when I realized that physicists know that they must understand charge collapse or they ain't going to get the unified field, that when I realized that it's specifically the problem of charge collapse that we have solved in detail with examples and proof and working technology. So now that we've discovered the cause of charge collapse, I realized we needed a new book to make that point, that once you understood charge collapse, you have an absolutely compelling, for the first time, knowledge of why objects fall to the ground and why consciousness exists. I mean, that is fundamental. And that was the point at which I sort of passionately said, well, we got to put together the solid evidence in a solid sequence of conversations with the graphics and the publications that we are in a new format, that although it was written to be compelling for professional scientists, it's done so in a way gently, and Tufan helped greatly with that it's also introductory in the sense that it says, it even says in the book, it says, well, the next 2 pages with our physics publications, if you're non-technical, you don't need to study that because the explanations are there. But if you want the physics publications, they're there as well. So this was intended to be compelling for the professional and of interest to the layman. And obviously, if a layman can understand for the first time why objects fall to the ground and why consciousness and life exists, I mean, that should be important, wouldn't you think? All righty. So that's planckfire.com. And I love the new term we have for it. The fire from Planck, the fire from the pixel. It's a great title for the solution to charge collapse. The solution to charge collapse is Planck fire. This is profound, and this is a new key to making propulsion and technologies and negentropy and healing devices and propulsion devices and energy devices. It's all underneath that cover story of, indeed, if you make charge collapse, that's the cause of 0-point energy. That's the way to access power from the vacuum to attract charge collapse. Actually, fractalfield.com/vacuum energy. So,
and then maybe another small trailer here. I'm also working on a new ruler that measures the Planck fire. It's going to be
do you have
Planck fire harmonizer.
Do you have that to show, Tufan, perhaps, or no?
Well, we have the standard golden ratio ruler. Probably many of you already know this, but I'm designing a new ruler which will exactly show you the Planck multiples of golden ratio. So it will show you the exact dimensions that the Planck comes to when you multiply it recursively with specifically golden ratio. So that's going to be specifically the Planck fire measure. So that's coming soon.
You take the golden ratio caliper and you calibrate the caliper. Right. And so calibrated is the sense that then it's marked at exactly which scale of unpacking you reach the Planck fire points. So you'll see where the sacred charge collapse. Yes. So it's the new Planck Fire golden ratio caliper coming soon, guys. Thanks to Tufan. He's deep in the process. Very cool. Very cool. Okay. So any questions about the new book? I guess so. We're going on to our conversation here then, huh?
Sure.
Okay. So let's see here. Yes.
We already have the, thank you, Dan Mac. Dan Mac shared the PDF version of it, and we'll soon announce it on other social media channels as well, once the paperback is available.
Right. So at planckfire.com, the Kindle and the PDF are available, and the paperback is coming soon within days. Okay. So this leads us now to the conversation scheduled for this evening, which is the science behind implosion in water and how that underlies theimploder.com, our water implosion technologies. And we have a lovely actual keynote prepared for that here. Let's see if I can, yes, keynote imploder2.key. Here we go. Okay. So now that we know that in order to get a vortex correct, so that the approaching compression conversion lines of charge and hydraulic pressure and electrical pressure, and we're going to get to that about the fact that under ideal conditions, the water in the implosion, if it is hard water, which in most cases it is, will be quite profoundly piezoelectric, meaning that the vortex has electrical compression down the compression lines to implode and make longitudinal, but also there's an electric field component if the water is piezoelectric, and the imploder notoriously works best in hard water. So now, if we understood that compression line, so look at the angle of that cone. The angle of that cone is, of course, the precise 60-degree cone into the star mother, into Dodeca Icosa, which is accurately implosive. And we later then proved that is by equation the structure of hydrogen. So now I have a piezoelectric electrical vortex coming to that convergence point. And because it's coming to the convergence point precisely in the geometry of hydrogen by equation, that means that the optimal conditions are set up for a way for charge collapse to be enabled precisely through Planck, precisely through hydrogen radii dimensions by equation. So this means that the ideal implosion angle, think of Victor Schauberger's vortex, that you can predict that this then will create maximum conditions for that implosion to spit out longitudinal coherence at the center of that vortex, because both scale and ratio are correct for charge collapse Planck fire. That's what's behind this nozzle, which I spent 10 years doing the CAD/CAM for. So getting the angle right for the compression lines and the electric lines, so when they converge, they optimally convert to longitudinal, and collapse tuned through Planck spits out the maximum amount of longitudinal. Just 1 second, I gotta just close the door here 1 second. 1 second, sorry. Sorry about that. Are there any questions that came up so far? Are we doing good?
We do have some questions, but it's not related to the employer. Maybe we can leave that for later.
Okay, good. So then this technology became theimploder.com, and we have over 10 years of experience having dramatic effect because we produce super solubility in that water. Remember, the water comes out charged and spinning, and then we spit it into a magnetic array. And so you have a charged spinning like the armature in a motor coming into a strong magnetic array, which is here in the super imploder. And we produce dramatic increase in solubility. And this is our super imploder. This is the new improved version for higher pressures here. This is our 3/4 inch version super imploder, all at theimploder.com. And these are some of even the very recent this year crop study results, dramatic results. In this case, 30% greater shoot weight than tap water. And there's literally hundreds of research studies there at theimploder.com, literally hundreds. And then in the 1-inch version, much heavier, about 34 pounds, solid stainless, thanks to our partner Jason, fractalwater.com, as we say, when they took this around Ohio and showed it to the Amish farmers, and we must credit Joel here, our wonderful friend there, the wells in Ohio are notoriously hard water. That's hard water. And Joel said that every single farmer who tasted the water bought one because the difference is so dramatic, not just for drinking, but for the plants, because you have super solubility and obviously all of thirst. Thirst itself, by definition, is hunger for the space within which to unpack charge. That's what thirst is, the very definition of hydration. So it's not about just spin density. It's literally about a space in which to fractally unpack charge. So obviously, if you've got increased spin density and radically increased solubility, that's hydration by definition. So we're talking about, people whose gray hair, and mine is still gray, but it starts becoming colored again. It's like any doctor will tell you that probably about 80% of all diseases is a hydration problem. So if you got room to unpack spin, man. But it is true that the Ultra Imploder, being virtually indestructible, 34 pounds, totally commercial rated and rated for very high pressure. Of course, it's just under $2,000, but it is super powerful, will last a lifetime, and you can do high pressure, high volume commercial applications. And there's some examples there, installations in Florida. And notice there's an installation bracket included. So there were, as we said, publications in Grozine magazine on the dramatic, and I'm talking like 40% growth benefit in hemp with the super imploder. This is the original super imploder. So these are some of the original slideshows we used to teach about how the squirt gun works and how the vortex works and implosive water treatment early studies. And this shows you some of the CAD/CAM work we did to develop the 3D print, which then became high pressure injection molding. Today, we're using Resin-X Technil as space age plastic, which is totally potable drinking rated high pressure in the black nozzle of the super imploder and triploder. And this just gives you an idea of how the original magnet array was fit in the super imploder, but later then this became a steel array, which you'll see in a minute, which concentrates the magnetic lines even further. These are early pictures. And early on, we had a transparent version, but now we're using the black nozzle for the shower as well because it's higher pressure rated. And many of the studies, you can see all these pictures at theimploder.com. Shows you examples of the installation. And Roger Green heroically proved with the imploder and then with effective microorganisms combined with the imploder and the agricultural ormes in the Bloom the Desert trials in Dubai, we had dramatic, not just success agriculturally, but we proved total reduction of salt in desert farmings. The salt in the desert literally reduced dramatically when we added the imploder, agricultural ormes, and effective microorganisms. You can read that whole story at fractalfield.com/bloomthedesert and also bloomthedesert.com. So this shows some applications. Yes, this is what we want to show. Thanks to Jason, our partner at fractalwater.com. All of these super imploders now have this steel array around the super magnets, around 3,000 to 5,000 Gauss in each of the 8 super magnets. And then by wrapping it in steel, you create a lens effect that increases the effective delivery from 3 to at least 5,000 Gauss by measurement, and also increases the life of the magnets. And that's because...
We have 2 quick questions. Is this device to implode water for us to drink or bath in, or mainly for plant growth? Malena asks.
Well, that's the thing. super solubility, spin density, hypersolubility, we call it, is super ideal for both people and plants. Both is the short, and people buy it for both reasons dramatically. The improvement in taste and the feel in your shower. I mean, the effect is amazing. And as we said, the original like 50% growth effect we got in the first trials in UK, these were done in areas where the water was very hard. And if you have hard water, Imploder is even more effective. And it's obvious why, because hard water drastically lacks solubility. Oops. And also the hard water mineral makes the water more piezoelectric, which means that water molecule coming out the tip of that spinner is more piezo, more electrical. So now you got a spinning charged molecule entering the supermagnet array, and the shredding effect is supersolubility. So yes, the supersolubility is wonderful for both people and agriculture, and it's used dramatically for both. This is just showing Jason's original measurements of the change from 3,200 Gauss to 4,700 Gauss when we simply added the steel wrapper. So it's reduced molecular cluster size mechanism for the supersolubility. And these are just some of the installations. This is for drinking water. And this is our other product. You'll see there, Triploder. This has particularly been proven useful for gardening, et cetera, but also for biodynamics people. And our local biodynamic scientist uses this and puts actually biodynamic preparations inside the inner vortex with dramatic results. I'm talking like if you put the biodynamically charged phosphorus inside the inner cone, and then there's a layer of beeswax super dielectric and a layer of thin film gold, inside the inner cone of the inner vortex, the farmer doesn't need to buy phosphorus anymore. Hello? Because I charged the geometry. This is the genius of Laurent, our local biodynamic scientist genius. And he starts with this Triploder, and we may have some pictures. So let's see. This is some of the original commercial pictures. I wanted to show you this. This is the hemp. It seems that hemp cannabis DNA particularly loves spinning vorticity. So as they showed here, by measurement, 168% increase in crop by weight by zapping the water with super imploder. And I tell you, the hemp farmers around the world have figured this out, and they love the imploder because hemp loves the imploder. There's lots of studies and trials on this. There's a whole section at theimploder.com about hemp. This is the effective treatment on wheat, early trials, super imploder. Example of an installation in a shower. Examples of using imploder and triploder in series and parallel for increased hypersolubility effect. This is trials done in Indiana. We want to thank some of our old friends. These trials here. This was done in 2010, 13 years ago. I want to thank Colin. When we first set up the super imploder, he planted the beans right there, right next to each other, right in the deck. And this was the actual difference in the beans growing right on the deck, one with super imploder, one without. Everything else was the same. It was amazing. So there's hundreds of, this is Colin. Actually, I think the film is on the site. Colin was a hero. He did a lot of the testing for us, but the results there just so many results. And you can see this. Oh yeah. And the effect on the ordering in the ice for ice rinks, for example, if you want more homogeneous ordering in the ice growth in your ice rink, this is a very valuable product, and it has to do with the strength of the ice. It's wonderful. This is one of the earlier models, which was a transparent. They were gorgeous, but unfortunately not as strong. So we get the same effect with the non-transparent, the black, but the black nozzle is much stronger. And there's animations. I'll see if these animations will play. So the cool thing here is, notice what happens if you touch. Watch when he touches that vortex. So there's your finger. Oh, why did the vortex respond? It's like touching a baby. See, you're affecting the pressure feedback loop back to the center of the vortex tip. So when you touch the vortex, it comes out to greet you. Isn't that interesting? So that vortex is quote unquote self-aware ? So we have many pictures of when we did and this is the analysis of material. Originally we were using a Fortron. Now we use Resonix Techno, which is even better. And some of the original CAD CAM projects. This is when we discovered that the pairs of magnets need to oppose. And when pairs of magnets oppose, this is a pair of magnets. Yeah, this is, I think these are both north poles. See, the north poles are marked. So now the north poles of those two magnets, the silvery ones are super magnets, and that's North Pole attracted to North Pole. Hello, how did the North Pole get attracted to the North Pole? It has to do with the fact that the dielectric quality of the metal washer between them is high enough dielectric that the flux lines go perpendicular. And so the opposite, the like poles of the magnet, which normally would repel, will in fact attract. Well, this is just introducing the idea of how it is, if you line up the like poles of the magnet, you can actually approximate the idea of phase conjugate magnetics, which is implosive. And then if you happen to understand that north versus south pole is a name for one is more centripetal than the other, and if you choose the right opposing pairs, which we do, for example, if you have a toothache and you put the north pole of the magnet on the toothache, the pain will be reduced, but the healing rate will slow down because there's less compression. If you put the south pole of that same magnet on the same toothache, the pain will increase, but so will the healing rate. And the difference is centripetal versus centrifugal. Think about that a minute. That's well documented, by the way. So obviously use the centripetal pair to produce implosion in water. So this is some of our early films on this. This is, and this is our early measurements of measuring before and after implosion in water using the GDV system. And actually Korotkov was with us there when we made those measurements. And this is measuring using the GDV to measure life force in architecture. And this was a measure of entropy in the water molecule before and after the imploder using the same GDV technology. This is the laboratory results showing over 60% of chlorine was removed using the imploder, and multiple reports, the imploder in the shower, your chlorine smell will mostly be gone. It's been documented. And this was then repeated in 2 different countries, including Thailand. So I'm not going to do all these slides. These are the plants. And yeah, too many pictures to do. So there are CAD CAM trials, and we were experimenting with bigger versions here. As you have many pictures here, the dramatic effect of super soluble water on plant growth and people. Things like back problems, hair problems, many kind of issues are related to hydration, and super solubility is a hydration solution. And I just want to say one last thing about that slideshow. Later, when we set up Therify centers, particularly the one in Norway and the one in Belgium, I want to thank Bengt, they used the imploder, the super imploder actually, in a spa in synergy with Therify plasma. And they proved repeatedly that particularly for skin issues like eczema, psoriasis, dramatic success using hypersoluble water and plasma treated water with the skin issue and then Therify. The reason that skin issues like eczema and psoriasis respond so well to hypersolubility in water is because the skin issues are related to a solubility problem, for example, blood acidity, etc. So I just wanted to say that anecdotally, there are dramatic reports of results. In fact, if you go to the Super Imploder website, theimploder.com, and click on Super Imploder, you'll see a picture of Bengt in his spa using the Super Imploder. But he personally helped dozens and dozens of people with skin issues, psoriasis, eczema, with imploder in a spa, plasma treated water plus Therify, because the solubility is literally access to spin. All right. So that was that PowerPoint. Do we have questions so far, Tufan?
Yes, a few questions.
Okay.
Derry asks, once water has gone through the imploder, is there a time over which the charge decays, or does it stay charged?
That is a very useful and appropriate question. Let me say that basically the water out of a vortex device, and remember, magnetic treatment of water was originally developed specifically to eliminate scaling in hot water heaters and in pipes. And so magnetic treatment of water is well proven to eliminate scaling in pipes and water heaters. Now, the reason for that is solubility. What a surprise. So magnetic water treatment is already proven and accepted by most governments on this planet. And you combine the vortex with the supermagnetics, you have something that's ideal and well known and well understood. So now getting to the question. So out the vortex, you got something that's spinning more. The molecular cluster size is smaller and the spin density is higher. Wonderful. You're going to get solubility. Now the question is, how long is that going to last? Which is the right question, obviously. The short answer is we did tests. We actually did tests in UK because we had found consistently like a 60% growth effect there. Again, it was very hard water. And so we did trials and we found that for at least 2 to 4 days in tank storage, the result would remain. However, probably after a week or two, it's going to weaken dramatically, actually, in tank storage, for example. And now let me mention some variables. Obviously, if you got more spin in the water, the things that are not going to help you retain the spin and smaller molecular cluster size. So high heat, high pressure, and continuously in touch with metal, these are things that decrease the spin storage faster. In other words, if the water is under higher pressure or higher temperature, or if the water stored in metal, then the spin effect is going to last a little bit less long. It's just normal. You can understand why. Now people ask, well, will it make it to the end of my garden hose? Yes. Will it make it to the other end of a pipe, 100 meters away? No problem. But is it going to last more than a week? Maybe not. But it will last at least several days in the early trials. Yes.
Okay. Daniel Zuluaga asks, hey, Dan and Tufan, would you say that by increasing spin density in the water, that it recoheres and realigns the geometric tetrahedral relationships of H2O due to the negentropic time reversal effects of phi ratios proportions used by your imploder? He's imagining that H2O is a tetrahedron whose vector line geometry may get unaligned in angles due to the sharp 90-degree angles of city pipes. Thanks for everything.
Well, there's a lot of interesting themes in that question. Actually, it's true. The reason why 90-degree angles are named evil in Feng Shui is because capacitive charge has most destructive interference in a right turn. So that's true. And if the turns in your pipe are a little gentler, spin density may last slightly longer. In practice, however, we find that right turns in the pipe doesn't cause that much of a problem. Most of them is the water is cushioning that turn a bit anyway, but obviously you're going to get some eddies in the flow. And so, better curvature in pipes can help sustain this. Now, the other part of the question, though, it gets even a little, let's say a little hairier. Is water naturally hex? I mean, is it tetracubic? Well, anybody who looks at ice is going to tell you, well, of course, water's hex. But then if you look at the hydrogen atom in the center of a DNA ladder, you're saying, oh, no, it's pent. So is water pent or hex? Well, it all depends. But the short answer is yes, because we tuned the vortex accurately, both by ratio and scale to Planck and the golden stellations. The Dodeca stellation Star Mother kit is a 60-degree cone, and that's what the vortex nozzle is. So we are benefiting from better charge collapse tuned to Planck, obviously, for the same reason that you want to use the new Planck Fire golden ratio scaling caliper, for that reason that you could invite charge collapse. But whether water is naturally tetracubic, yes, the original ice molecule will be tetracubic, true. However, have you ever heard of ice 9? Or, DNA is a form of ice in some way, and it's absolutely not hex. And it's all built around hydrogen. So, but remember, the key part of all geometry lessons, the turning point in every geometry lesson there is how the tetra, nests, embeds in an orderly way in the dodecadecosah. So the angle that this tetracube, you can see just a bit the red inside there, the tetracube tilts 32 degrees and then rotates and embeds in pent. So that ability we thought, oh, it was just a nice symbolism in occult chemistry and theosophy, the Greater Maze, how the Star Mother kit started. But wait a minute. Oh, that's how you discover how the pi suborbital, tetracubic, nests in the DNF suborbital, dodecacosa, which is every electron shell in the whole atomic table. So the chemistry of the difference between cubic structures, tetracubic structures, and pent structures is profound. That the DF, dodecacosa outer electron shells, gives you the platinum group metals, gold, palladium, and platinum. They are phase conjugators. It gives you the noble gases. The DF subshells are complete. The icosa dodeca on the outside is complete. That's implosive. That's a phase conjugation. And that's called a noble gas. Noble gases in the Theraphi is how you phase conjugate optically. So these are well-tuned collapse, like literally gold. So in the stellation, when the tetracube pi suborbital embeds in the DF suborbital correctly, you get a conjugator. Another advanced version of that is to understand then one single spark can turn the classically tetracubic carbon atom, visualized diamond, one little spark in that the triangle in the carbon atom unpacks slightly, and suddenly the carbon formed this fullerene, dodecacosa. So slight change in the carbon angle, little spark from the carbon arc. And you go from diamond carbon to fullerene carbon. And a fullerene carbon, dodecacosa, is a conjugator. It's magic. It's the hottest subject in all of chemistry. So all that did was turn from tetracube to pent, dodeca. That was the magic. It's a very, very profound question to think about. Anyway, more questions?
All right. We have 3 questions about the elimination of chemicals. I'll sum them up. So has there been testing to see if the imploder assisted in removing any other chemicals like sulfur and more within the tap water? Another one asks if the imploder reduces the halides in the water, and another one,
the halides.
Halides. If the ultra imploder eliminate the use of water treatment chemicals in a jacuzzi bath at a spa center.
Yeah, a very appropriate question again. What we know is in 2 countries, we confirmed by proof that imploder reduced chlorine replicably at least 60% or more. I desperately wanted them to test fluorides, but sorry, we didn't get that far. Financing, other issues. The labs that were doing this were focused on chlorine because of the problems locally. But when we hypothesize the mechanism by which added spin spins out the chlorine, it would be very totally logical. First of all, you think, well, what's being spun out? You increase the spin density and you're spinning out the heaviest thing, which is the chlorine atom. It's big, it's heavy, it's clunky. So of course, that's what gets spit out first. And the fluoride would be logically that it would be spun out too. So I think it's highly probable that the imploder is reducing fluoride as well as chlorine, but it is not proven. And that would have to be regarded as speculation. And the halides, well, that's a similar question, although that has to do with this salt-related items. And the salt, what we know is that when we have salt water, we're not necessarily removing the salt, but by increasing the spin density, what before the salt was inhibiting solubility, we increased solubility without removing the salt. Interesting point. So, and remember, what your body wants when you're thirsty is space to unpack charge in, is defined by solubility. It's not defined by how much salt is in the water. So if you restore the solubility, even if you got some of the heavy stuff still in the water, if you got solubility, you got hydration. So this is a fairly sophisticated question, and I haven't answered this at a totally chemical level, but you get the flavor here that increased spin density, reduced molecular cluster size, and solubility increase is going to solve problems for what's in the water, even if all the bad stuff ain't out yet. Another way of looking at this is that most pollution water treatment plants, for example, have discovered that things like the imploder, super imploder, is so helpful because it will increase bioreactivity, which is what solubility hydration does, and it will increase sedimentation rate in filtration plants. And by the way, I have another secret for you here. If you got dirty puddles of water all over your farm or all over Nigeria, there's a trick. It's a cool trick. It was Plocher, Plocher.de, who imitated a scientist I was working with, Gary Skillen, in Canada. So you got dirty ponds of water. You take highly piezo fine rock powder, being primarily quartz sand or quartz powder or some calcite, both highly piezo. Now you got that piezoelectric rock powder, which is, by the way, what our rainmaking team is using here in South France to do what a labyrinth does, even in a more concentrated level. You take this rock powder and you zap the hell, I mean, you zap it good inside. Well, the ancients used a pyramid. Gary Skillen used a pyramid, and Plocher.de, they use the equivalent of a pyramid. But you know what works better to zap the piezo? Verify. So you zap the heck out of this piezo rock powder. So when you hold it in your hand, it feels like, oh, it's buzzing. Well, you take a little of that and you sprinkle it into dirty water, and you know what? Magic. Because charge density is sedimentation rate. Spin density is sedimentation rate. It's just like a centrifuge. It will enable the sorting. So anywho, there's a lot of neat tricks. But now that charged rock powder, you can use it to make a Sri Yantra in the desert and change the local microclimate. You can use it to make a stone tower. Gary Skillen used to take little jars of that charged rock powder, and he would put a triangle of those jars around the geopathic line, which was killing every cow that stood in that stall in the geopathic barn. And he healed so many cows that he decided to do it for people. And he would say, well, don't tell me who's sick in the house. And he would go make a magnetic map of everybody's bed, and he would tell you who was sick in the house. And then he would fix it. You know how he fixed it? 3 little jars of white rock powder that if you held those jars, they would tingle. And the geopathic line will bounce around, because energy lines will bounce a great distance to find some quartz because they like it. Anywho, I went on a side trip there. And next question. Too fun.
Does the imploder reduce salts and other molecules where they go?
I can't say in laboratory studies that the super imploder itself reduced salt, but the primary result of the weeks-long study that Roger helped set up in Dubai, bloomthedesert.com and fractalfield.com/bloomthedesert, the primary successful outcome, in addition to increased growth, was reduced salt in the desert. They measured that. Now, that was from the combination of super imploder, agricultural ormes, and effective microorganisms. And those work great in synergy with the super imploder, absolutely. So they did measure reduced salt in that case. And what we can say is that people who have hard water, even though, which salt is often a big part of, or salts or halides, even though they did not prove they eliminated the mineral in the water was so much more soluble when they were done with the imploder that in many, many cases, it's documented that the super imploder, or by implication, the ultra imploder, can replace the need for a water softener. Next question.
Okay, another one from Scott. Can you explain how the phi scaling angle 76.345 fits or not into the geometry of implosion you described?
Yeah, the 76-degree angle is a well-known, the peak, the top of the Russian pyramids and the base of the Egyptian pyramids. And it's obvious if you nest spheres in that pyramid, and this is courtesy of our friend, I forget his name, who did all that work. So if you nest spheres in that pyramid, golden ratio spheres nest perfectly in that conic angle, implying that that is the angle to golden ratio add and multiply and spit out a longitudinal at the climax point. So yes, that 76-degree angle, we have slides on that. And you can see that slide in the slideshow all 3 of the last 4 talks on our YouTube channel. That slide is there. And the point is that the reason that 76-degree angle is effective is because it enables golden ratio spheres to nest and therefore enables charge collapse using golden ratio of the electric fields in that cascade, enabling implosion through Planck to spit out more efficiently the longitudinal component, which is why the pyramids were effectively a global wireless power grid, because they were using the Schumann cascade, which we now know is an intended tuned phase conjugate pump wave, well tuned to Planck. You know, Hermes did his job when he designed the Earth. These was called the Cedars. You know, how come the Schumann cascade is golden ratio to Planck? That ain't an accident. Hello, somebody worked to do some planet taming to get it ready so there could be people here. So the pyramids were called the Hummer because the phase conjugate pump wave of Schumann. Piezoelectric ran the pyramid, and out the bottom comes this longitudinal interferometry. And then all the pyramids are at the golden ratio Dodecki-Cosa Earth grid points, precisely because that's a longitudinal node to enable global wireless power. Tesla was well into longitudinals, but he didn't have the frequency cascade right. He didn't know my equation, and he didn't locate the nodal positions correctly for longitudinal nodes.
More at planckfire.com.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. A question from Terry Arnett. Would a super imploder purify a city pond? What would the imploder installation look like?
The super imploder is a 3/4 inch device, which is enough for, you know, 1 or 2 good showers and toilet in a small house, etc. It's really not for large scale commercial applications. The ultra imploder is exactly perfect for commercial applications such as that, where you can have unlimited pressure and high volume, and we have even the systems to parallel them for even higher pressures, but you get full 1-inch pipe of flow rate in the ultra imploder, and you can parallel them easily. We even have a picture on the website, the ultra imploder. And yes, you could definitely do commercial ponds for sure with that. And you would have dramatic, you know how in ponds they need to put a fountain to rehydrate for the fish. Well, a lot of that effect could be achieved with an imploder, because what kills ponds, aside from lack of oxygen, is lack of flow, which is actually lack of spin. So when Schauberger said, anytime water stands still, it dies, what he actually meant was anytime water doesn't spin, it dies. So restored spin density is a dramatic part of keeping ponds alive, for sure.
Okay, Denmark asks, how do you do the magnetic measure of a bed?
Well, that's the right question. So we have often said that it's perfectly fine to find your local geobiologist and dowser and ask for help. That's appropriate. However, the basic skill to feel a basic magnetic line for yourself, in my view, is a survival requirement skill, actually, and that's why as I noticed in my own life, if it gradually, after a lifetime of meditation and bliss and, you know, kind of get yourself together, hygiene, my ability to feel magnetic lines has become amazing. I must say, I surprised myself the other day. So they took us out in the wilderness here. We're doing these, we put in 2 giant labyrinths. See the pictures at goldenmean.info/labyrinth. And so we went out to this isolated location. My car almost broke. It was such a rough road. And we get out there and they says, yes, now we need to find the magnetic line cross here. And I look out and it's huge and it's dry and it's ugly and it's painful. And how are you going to find where the magnetic line crosses on this, like, you know, 10 acres or whatever? And I looked around and I realized that I could put my hand up at a distance and feel. And my inner guides told me exactly what direction to walk and where that magnetic line cross was. I didn't have the whole giant property. I didn't have to search the whole thing. Not a bit. I walked right to where the magnetic line cross was. And we went up there and the other dowsers with us all confirmed it. And I just reached up and said, where's the magnetic line? And it spoke to me, man. It was so cool. And that's, you know, after a few years of Kundalini, your blood becomes a superconductor. So you can talk to the magnetic lines and they'll tell you right the direction to walk to find a big magnetic line cross after you practice for a while. But to start, it's quite simple. You relax with your hands almost at your side. You can use dowsing rods or pendulum if you like, and they're useful. But I feel it is best to just you don't need toys. And as you walk across a strong magnetic line and your hands are relaxed, not quite parallel to your body, out a little bit, you should notice, if you've got a strong magnetic line, you're going to notice that the tips of your finger are going to tingle a little bit as you walk over that magnetic line. And then you practice and you get better at it. And eventually you can find exactly where these magnetic lines cross. And it's actually easier than you think. It's actually a lot of fun. So the point is, what Gary Skillen would do is he would make a magnetic map of everybody's bed, actually. Now, the world's most advanced geobiology school, Stephan Cardinaux, Lausanne, you can read about goldenmean.info/geobiology. See the pictures. Stephan had an axial cranial adjust. He had a major rust, bunch of Kundalini experience, and then suddenly he was clairvoyant and he could see the magnetic lines, the Hartmann-Curry-Pei ray lines. He could see them at a distance. He's amazing, amazing. This is a world class. And then he figured out the frequency at which would deflect each of the Hartmann-Pei ray Curry lines. You know, a Pei ray line is deflected by gold and will save a beehive. So you got to, geobiology is a very advanced science, but basic geobiology is you got to be able to feel a little bit of the Earth's magnetic blood for yourself, or else, imagine you couldn't feel the energy of your lover's blood. Ooh, that would not be good, was it? Well, that's the same that applies to the Earth's magnetic blood. You got to be able to feel it. It's very important. And yes, the old story is, make a magnetic map, first your bed, your house, and your backyard, and then your village, and rearrange all the magnetic maps to look like a rose, and then you're done. And the famous mayor in that Bohemian village took the magnetic map of the village and color-coded it on all the roads of the village. So walking through the village, you saw the color and the sidewalks showing you where the magnetic lines are. So all the kids know exactly where the magnetic blood is, and they're not going to cut those magnetic lines. So they will not be desertifying that village.
Thank you. Next one comes from Somer. I have a theoretical question. What if they did blood transfusions and donations with your vortex imploder? I have a feeling it would refresh the blood back to order rather than disorder.
There's many issues there. I think actually the blood plasma might benefit from this hydration, solubility, but the larger blood cells, white and red blood cells, they're fragile, actually. From a medical perspective, I would regard that as a bit of a complicated question. However, the water that's used for surgery and infusion, and there's water used in blood plasma, that water, charging it that way, might be very useful and effective. Basically, hydration and solubility, it's the same as drinking spring water. It's a good thing. But to directly vortex the blood itself, that's a very complicated medical question. And I think we wouldn't want to jump.
Yeah, miniature version.
Yeah. Well, possibly a minute. It might. I don't know. Very interesting. Yeah. The blood responds to magnetism in amazing ways, and there's lots of ways to magnetism for healing in blood. So.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, nice, Dan. There's magnets. Go ahead, Tufan. Was there more?
Yeah, Saraswati says, Satnam, please clarify if imploder regulates the pH of water by design.
Many trials were done with the super imploder, and there are such variables. For example, what is the pH or redox of the initial water, or what is the hardness? So what we do know is we can consistently, rather dramatically, reduce hardness in water, increase solubility. We know that for sure. As for redox and pH, remember the famous biological terrain analysis in which if you measure the resistance, pH, and redox in the water in the living cell, you can put it on a chart and know in advance who's got cancer. That's called the terrain, the water's pH, acidity, the redox potential, and the resistance. Those are the three variables you measure, and you can make a graph and determine who's got cancer. It's well proven. So it is important to get your pH and your redox measurement in range. And what we can say is it's true. We got some beneficial measurement in a good direction with redox potential, but it was a small movement, but it was fairly consistent. But it, again, depends so much on whether you're starting with hard water and what kind of pH and redox values you got to start with. But it did move in a useful direction, and it would tend to help buffer, and to buffer means to move acidity towards 7, for example. So it was helpful, but the results were not dramatic change, but there was a significant redox change, for example, with the imploder. And those studies and the graphs, they're there on the Super Imploder research site. It links from theimploder.com, and it goes to fractalfield.com/imploder magnetic research, and you can see all those studies and trials, and they're very detailed.
Would the imploder water be helpful for people with EMF hypersensitivity?
Well, imploder water is going to add charge distribution efficiency to some extent, and add solubility. So, people that are I'm electrosensitive, definitely. The Wii drive me mad in short order over here. So I'm an electrosensitive. And do I like drinking imploder water? Yes. Do I like high quality spring water? Yes. But does that make my electrosensitivity go away? No, but I don't want my electrosensitivity to go away. I like being sensitive. Thank you very much. It ain't so easy when you're living in the city and the electrosmog is killing you. It's not so easy when somebody says, well, just move to a cabin in the woods. Did that person help you with that advice? Well, it's complicated. Like, what if you can't afford it? Do you want to be sensitive? Complicated question, but nature wants you to be sensitive.
Okay, another one from Diego. Could there be in water by vortex charge collapse effect? The bad toxic molecules are sorted or dissolved in smaller basic forms, and only true beauty can pass.
Paul did this study research. He was trying to show that things like graphene in the blood, for example, could be broken up better after exposure to plasma. And the hypothesis was that if you added charge to the blood with plasma, or presumably with the imploder, that would speed up the body's ability to get rid of it. And I think that's a useful and appropriate hypothesis, that anything that breaks up the big and the ugly and the poisonous helps your body to get rid of it. It makes total sense. So in that sense, one could logically hypothesize that the spin density that this imploder adds can help the body get rid of nasty stuff in the water, because obviously when it's broken up, it's easier to metabolize and get out of there. And that would be mechanically true of things even like carbon graphene stuff in the blood. That's a appropriate and useful hypothesis. Has that been proven? I don't think so. Is it a useful hypothesis? I think it is. And basically, it's like thinking about what to use the centrifuge, the spin cycle for. The centrifuge is used to sort. Well, that's sort of our answer here, isn't it?
Okay, we have some questions about the piezo fire. Adam asks, does it involve suppression of pain or elimination of the problem?
And that is, was it a Band-Aid or was it a fix? In some cases, a doctor will say, well, if you reduce the pain, you have helped fix it. Other people say, ooh. But let's talk about it. So here we're adding electrical compression in a limited but powerful spectrum of phase conjugation. Infrasound up to, it's under 20,000 hertz, but it's beautifully lensed through the shungite. So you've got a pretty good electrical pine cone kissing noses right there. And if you stick your finger in there, I did that today. I cut my finger right here. I really jabbed it quite, I don't know if you can see it. I jabbed that quite badly. I stuck it in here for less than 5 minutes, and the pain was absolutely gone for sure. And it healed up beautifully. I can't even feel I did it right now. Well, restored compression is more than just the elimination of pain, restored compression is negentropy itself, because, we used to say that pain happens when charge bleeds because fractality just broke. Well, it's true. You cut yourself, you're less fractal, compression ain't working so good, and the charge is squirting out. And you call that pain because the charge is leaking. Well, of course, it feels better when you press on it, but at an even deeper level, when the compression is electrical, restored electrical pressure is, by definition, restructuring. So there'd be pretty good reason to believe that when I stuck myself pretty badly here and stuck it in here, I wasn't just reducing the pain, I was actually helping to restore the compression that helped the molecules find their way back into compression electrically. So I was actually serving the process of reassembling the broken fractal, actually. So my hypothesis would that not only are reducing pain, but I believe we would accelerate rejuvenation rate. And, when phase conjugation does time reversal rejuvenation, that's an introduction. When you de-differentiate to make a stem cell because of phase conjugation, time reversal, good parallel.
Hey,
Does
Dan, may
the
I share
pain
some information?
Sorry?
May I share some information with the group?
Well, sure. What's it about? Mhm.
Yeah, it's about what we're talking about. As far as the last question about being hypersensitive to basic electro fog, I wanted to share these coils. The website doesn't exist anymore, so don't go there. But these Torus coils, I've made numerous versions of these coils, and I've had many people who are very sensitive tell me this has helped them, just having them around, not even plugged in, set to a certain frequency, but just having them around them helped them tremendously with that fog. Now, what I tell people about these coils is, as was mentioned, we have all this smog around us everywhere. And with these coils, you can program a frequency, whether it's the Schumann resonance or 432 hertz or 528 hertz. You can have a positive frequency around you to counter all the negative stuff, because even your electrical wiring in the US is based off of 60 hertz, which is not very good for the body. In fact, you would want to keep your bed away from the wall if you have electrical wiring there. But I wanted to share this as one solution for that problem of all the electro smog that's around us.
That's everybody. This is Aircrete Harry. Aircrete Harry's a hero with Vortex and his cement domes. Harry, give them your website that does work. What is it again?
Yeah, it's aircreteharry.com. And I'm also on YouTube. If you look me up on YouTube, you can see my videos where I'm building.
And where are you located again?
I'm in Colorado.
In Colorado. Yeah, check out Aircrete Harry's website. He's amazing. He's doing and he's actually rebuilding the real Schauberger Vortex, aren't you? With the gold coating and making the Vortex work. So I'm very supportive of what you're doing, Harry. I think it's fabulous. And you're right. If you make any kind of Vortex, it will help with the sorting. So good start there. Right on. Amen.
Because if you look at it also, when the Vortex is just sitting on the table, I'll give you another example. When it's just sitting there with the conductive wiring, you can almost look at it as causing an electrical funnel. Like you would pull the cork on your bathtub and you would see a funnel. This is doing that electrically with your atmosphere around you.
Yeah,
so,
making a vortex
and it's
to sort.
also, yeah, exactly. And it's also what our body produces. We have this field, a male and female torus coming out of us. So these coils also help to align the energies in the body. And they've been very helpful for many people. Now, as Dan just mentioned, I read this article on Dan's website, and I was so blown away by the fact that the scientists did this experiment where this egg, if you're not familiar, is covered with silver plating on the inside.
Silver or gold even, but yeah.
Silver or gold. And so I saw this, I said, it seems simple enough So I'm going to be replicating this this coming month. Next month, I'll be replicating this experiment. I have air form coming. And when I say air form, I have these air bladders made in the shape of an egg. And I'll just give you an example of one of
To build
those.
concrete domes. This is wonderful. This is the real Schauberger. You see, the silver gold coating enables the charge to build because it, obviously if it's like a platinum group metal. And then if you get a flat spinner at the bottom, a non-fractionating in that vortex, and you get a voltage difference between the widest point and the narrowest point. And if the water is piezoelectric doped, so Harry's hot on the trail. He's going to make some gravity in a generator from the vacuum here. Harry, cool.
Yeah, I've been dying to make my own UFO for a long time. So this is just one step towards that.
Go Harry,
Now-
go Harry. Yes.
Now, what I'm showing here is one of the air forms for my large water tank. This originally is to build an underground cistern in an egg shape, and the pointy side would be down. And the idea is basically not only the implosion, but the temperature difference between the water touching the walls and the water in the center will cause a natural circulation to prevent any stagnation of the water.
That's
So
right
I'm
there.
explaining that in this video here. But I have the same thing, much smaller version of that air form made. And I'll be picking that up next week and making my tank very soon.
I mean, if we prove this principle, by the way, this is how the Hanabu Nazi bell flew, and this is charge collapse perfected. It's all the above, Harry. I think you're a hero. It's great. We're supporting this work. It's cool.
And so here on the table, this is a microgreen experiment I'm doing. I did a preliminary experiment using the tri-imploder.
Mhm.
And I did hydrogen water and a control sample. Now I didn't take any photos or video, but I did notice a noticeable difference between my control water, my hydrogen, and the imploded water with the tri-imploder.
Yeah, that's the
that was
triploder right
before.
there. Yep.
Yes, this
Cool.
is the tri-imploder here. Now this is before I got the super imploder. And so now that I have the super imploder, I'm doing an experiment with a control water on the left. The second from the left is hydrogen. You can see on the table, I have a hard water tester. So I could test the hardness of the water.
Nice.
And this AquaCure machine, it's a Brown's gas machine. It produces hydrogen and oxygen. And you can see, you'll see that bubbling in a minute. And so I did the experiment where I ran the triploder for 10 minutes, cycling the water. So I have a bucket of water, all the water is from the same source. So I have a bucket of water here, and I ran that for 10 minutes with the triploder. And then I'll just skip along here. Then I set up my hydrogen machine, and I have the Brown's gas going.
See, the hydrogen is beautifully synergetic here because it's profoundly implosion. Hydrogen nanobubbles are wonderful for all of this, and breathing and healing and water, useful, very useful.
Yes, and the hydrogen has, I was able to notice a difference immediately when I started inhaling the hydrogen gas.
In the spa, it's wonderful. Synergy with Therify is wonderful. Hydrogen nanobubbles is very magic stuff. And even, in Japan, it's hot stuff for in their spas there for healing, hydrogen. So you put that in the water. And so your next is with the super imploder. Is that right, Harry, then?
Yeah, so I'm not sure I have the footage here. I just tried to look for it, it didn't pop up. But next I ran the super imploder for 10 minutes as well. And once I was done, I soaked the first seeds I was using, which were black oil sunflower seeds. In fact, I'm missing one video, but you can see here, I have the black oil sunflower seeds soaking in each of the waters, the control, the hydrogen, the triploder, and the super imploder.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
yeah, and so I just did this, but I'm increasing this from just the sunflower seeds to broccoli, snow peas, and
That's wonderful. Oh, that's super. This is new.
cabbage.
This is new. This is hot off the press. So please keep us posted, Harry. You're a hero. It's wonderful. We're glad you're
Yes,
there.
absolutely.
Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
And so I wanted to share that with everyone. And also there's another thing I wanted to share just for everyone's awareness. If you're not aware, of this channel. When it comes to energies, I've discussed this with Dan before in the past, but this is a really good Facebook page called Evolving Humans. And on this page, this gentleman here named Ian, he demonstrates to people energy. And so right now, he'll have people put their hands between his, and he'll pull pain away from people. He's healed broken bones. It's a really good channel, and I really encourage people to watch this. And he gives some free meditations on how to develop this energy field that we all have. And like Dan says, once you develop this, and it doesn't take long, if you do it for a good year or at least 6 months practicing every day, you will become sensitive enough to feel the difference in plants and the biomagnetic field of your own body and other people's bodies. So I just really wanted to share this. And also, he does examples here at a hospital where they have some thermal imaging camera on someone's, he's done this a few times, and you can see in real time as he pulls the pain away from people, and you can see their reactions, and it's really amazing. And it's something like Dan always says, if you could focus your attention on the tip of your finger.
Exactly.
This is the same thing, but you know, and I'm saying this because I don't know how many people are actually practicing. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we watch these videos from Dan all the time and read, but I don't know if the people are actually practicing. And that's all you really need to do. If you just practice every day, you'll develop this own ability of your own. And this imploded water is not only great for your plants, because I'm hearing they're going to be shooting mRNA into fruits and animals now. So you can't even trust anything happening. So you're best growing your own food, and this imploder will help.
That's great.
Will help towards that.
Harry,
so
you're a hero.
The last thing is, I just received my order of fruit trees. I have all kinds of fruit trees. And willow tree here, and I'm also practicing electroculture, and I'm using the imploded water to water. So you can see these copper coils that I've made on some of the plants. And so this is another thing I'm experimenting with. I'm hearing a lot of good information. So the combination of imploded water with this coil is just really going to increase your food production and your own body's energy, your own body's health. Because once you can increase your own implosion, you can do something that I practice very often, which is astral projection. And that air form I showed you, I'll be making my own meditation egg that I can get in to do meditations. And this will be coated with quartz crystal cement on the inside, as well as probably a silver lining for extra energy retention to help me pop out of my body more easily.
It's true that if you get the right dielectric and piezo sand in the cement, you can make an implosive capacitor if you keep away from the steel rebar. Exactly. And the idea of the electroculture is very beautiful and very useful. In fact, our friends here in France, they can literally decide on how long they want their carrots to be based on, you know, you stick that antenna, and you can see why. It just produces that critical electrical difference between top and bottom that determines the direction of the growth. And I also love Harry's metaphor there that, you know, when Gurdjieff said, don't start the sacred gymnastic until you can put your attention in your little finger with enough density to cause it to tingle. And then Harry's right. Eventually, then you use that. You're steering the tornado, the field effect, with your mind, and you use that in practice to heal people. That's a powerful, important talent and skill that many people have, and it should be understood scientifically. It's empowering. So, Harry, you're a hero. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
All cool. Check out aircreteharry.com, right, Harry? So,
thanks for sharing, Harry.
So it's getting a little late, but do we have a few more questions, Tufan? Thank you, Harry. So,
yeah, right now we have 4 more questions.
Okay.
So what causes water, spring water, for example, to become naturally alkaline through the process? Are there crystals, minerals that I can use in my water jug at home to lower the OH minus, H plus, so as to no longer have to use pH up and pH down solutions?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the filtration layers in a mountain, I would assume that if you've got some limestone layers, that's going to give you some alkalinity, it makes total sense. And so limestone related layers and calcare would increase the alkalinity, for example. Absolutely. And a lot of people put quartz in their water, and that will help the piezo to some limited extent, but certainly limestone layers. And then what the biodynamic people tell you, the farmer should not buy his phosphorus fertilizer. The farmer should put the biodynamic dynamization for phosphorus in the nozzle of his vortex and charge the water. And now the water's got the electrical memory of the phosphorus, and the farmer no longer has to buy the fertilizer. It's really true. So there's a lot to this about how you charge the water and how you use the natural filtration of the earth to restore alkalinity. Absolutely. And we can only touch on it here, but it's a very beautiful question.
Does adding hydrogen affect the pH of the water?
To some extent, I think it would, because hydrogen is naturally implosive. So I think you'd get a little bit of movement toward the alkaline, but not directly, indirectly. It would, I think, even have more effect on redox potential, oxidation reduction potential. But basically, a hydrogen nanobubble is simple. One hydrogen atom is absolutely magically implosive. Think of Pat Flanagan discovering how to make microhydrin. He took a water molecule, rearranges it to be a clathrate, which is a dodecahedron of water molecules, and then he sticks in nanohydrogen into center, and he's got the imploder going inside of water clathrate dodeca. It's analogous to the fullerene. Carbon does the same thing because it's a conjugator. So yes, nanohydrogen, nanogold, these are profound conjugators, profoundly implosive, and profoundly useful for biology in many ways. And stick them in the water, oh yeah, magic. Hydrogen. The thing about hydrogen nanobubbles is to do it right gets a little pricey sometimes. Like if you call Japan and you say, I want a hydrogen nanobubbler for my spa, it's going to be big bucks. But there are cheaper solutions. But hydrogen nanobubbles are a wonderful thing for people, for breathing, for water, for the imploder vortex, for the Therify. Yes.
Another question regarding the piezo fire. Does the pain relief from piezo fire also means less healing, similar to the toothache example?
You see, actually, I think not. In the case of the toothache, there's several books on magnetics and healing. I should get the books out. I should hand them out. But they do show examples proving that, remember, magnetic north versus magnetic south. The labels on the magnets in China are the opposite of the labels on the magnets in the USA. So it's confusing as hell. And then China builds most of the magnets for the USA. So sorting out which is magnetic north, magnetic south is not simple. But when you do that correctly, you generally find that the magnetic south is centripetal and therefore would increase the pain of the toothache, but presumably increase the healing rate. And the magnetic north, centrifugal, will reduce the pain, but presumably reduce the healing rate. But remember, that is a single DC polarity effectively, whereas the compression and rarefaction caused by the implosive phase conjugate pump wave caduceus harmonic inclusive beam of piezofire.com would be true harmonic inclusive cascade implosion, literally a caduceus. And so I would think, and I'm only hypothesizing here, that the restoration of healing rate of a complex harmonic inclusive source like implosion sound, infrasound modulation in piezofire.com would be more long-term conducive to helping to heal. Whereas it is said that if you're just using a magnet to increase or reduce pain, it doesn't have that negentropic effect.
All right, last question.
By the way, the pictures on that are goldenmean.info/magnetics. There's a whole bunch of pictures about that. Go ahead.
Thank you. Malena asks, can you say something about the bubble tech to create euphoria and whether that benefits us or is dangerous? You just mentioned something about bubble and it sparked this question.
by bubble tech, does she mean hydrogen nanobubbles or just bubble? See, the thing about bubbles is that like our solution to distillation and producing water from seawater involves bubbles. Actually, if you pop a bubble correctly, it implodes. So why is popping bubbles euphoric and blissful? Because the very geometry by which they pop, if it's correct, if the size of the bubble and the frequency of the ultrasound you use to pop the bubble is phase conjugate implosive, then the implosion of the bubble at the moment of popping is a conjugator. It's implosive. It's charge collapse. Why do you think bubbles can actually eat away completely and destroy a ship propeller? They call it cavitation. Bubbles can be powerful. And if bubbles implode correctly, man, that is charge collapse. So the subject of bubbles and bliss is very, very rich. And we can't do the whole conversation now, but it's a very deep conversation. Why is the perfect bubble collapse perfect charge collapse and therefore potentially blissful? It is an introduction of perfect collapse. And maybe you could sing the famous song, "Don't Break My Pretty Balloon."
I believe we have successfully addressed all questions tonight.
Well, good. It's 9:30 and my voice is giving out. But I think we had some fun, guys. You know, this wasn't just an ad for our toys. It's that too. But this was a discussion of the self-empowering pure principle behind implosion, which is charge collapse, which is PlanckFire.com, PiezoFire.com, TheImploder.com. But thank you for your sincere questions. Thank you for your help, Tufan. Thank you, Air Creek. It was wonderful. You're really a hero. Thank you, Summer. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you for smiling. Stay with us.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next week. Blessings and blessings. Take care. Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye. Bye.